You did some Courtney, right?
Yeah. She offered me 50 grand to whack Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, I was telling you this.
She what?
50 grand to whack Kurt Cobain.
And that's a fact, is it? But people might think you're not the most reliable witness.
Well, that's too bad. You may not be the reliable witness your own self. Now think about that one.
Yeah.
You know, when she offered me money, God dang, I wish I would have taken it, man. But I know who whacked him.
But how are you going to whack him? Did she tell you how to do it?
Yeah, blow his fucking head off.
But where were you going to find him to do it?
Well, up there, and she gave, mapped it out. I mean, up there in Bellevue, wherever they live, right outside Seattle. I know right where the house is. I know right what garden pop him in. I just didn't think she was serious.
But did she tell you how she wanted you to pop him?
Yeah, she says, blow his fucking head off. I got the shotgun.
But she didn't say anything about making
it look like suicide.
Well, yeah, but if you just blew his brains out like you said, it wouldn't look like suicide. It looked like you blew his brains out, right?
But I told Alan, my friend, who... I'll let the FBI catch him. But that's just the way it's done. End of story. Hey, 50 grand does a lot of talking. You buy me a beer, I might do some more talking. Ah!
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thank you for listening to the McJeffrey 500. This is the podcast where I count down my 500 favorite films of all time and then make my friends watch them one movie at a time. It is October 9th, 2015, and
Friday.
I'm actually elated that I forgot the words to that song. Mr. Scott at the table with his young son attached to his chest.
Not only do you make your friends watch your 500 favorite films one movie at a time, you also make your friends' children watch them one movie at a time.
Well, if they have children, and as far as co-hosts go, you're the only one that does.
Well,
guess
gotta be the first at something.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Ryan will enjoy this upcoming movie as much as he enjoyed the last one. But before we get into that, let's Mr. Scott at the table. Let's do the prerequisite small talk. How you been?
I've been well. I'm now 2 weeks back at work.
Have you settled in?
Yeah, it's gone as smoothly as I would expect it to go.
Did they make you a welcome back cake?
One of my coworkers gave me a welcome back box of frosted granola bars.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
So
you can throw a candle on that, blow it out. It's good times.
I was pretty thrilled with having granola bars. When I'm just sitting at my desk all day, I could eat a small horse, maybe not like a full size like Clydesdale, but I could definitely
a pony.
Definitely a pony,
for sure.
Maybe a Lipizziner.
That goes without saying.
A stallion.
You're getting crazy, man. No eating stallions.
No.
That's frowned upon.
I don't think I've ever eaten horse meat.
If I have, I wasn't aware that I did.
Now it's illegal in California, so...
So, when would I have ever ate horse meat?
Probably prior to 2004 or so. It was well before the foie gras ban.
Never had that either.
which I think that got thrown out after it was appealed at the federal level.
Yeah.
And the way it worked out with foie gras is that people were flocking to national park land because technically it wasn't considered part of California if you're in a national park.
Serious?
So you could go to a restaurant in Yosemite that served foie gras. I know, it's upsetting. They force-feed geese.
I know. They seem to like it, though. You know, a goose's life is not a charmed life. And quite frankly, geese are assholes.
I think they get a bum rap, fair or unfair.
Yeah. Maybe they don't deserve the treatment of.
I think that I think it's more that they're just more territorial than some other animals.
Mean.
Well, but I mean, if you were kind of pushed to nothing but
yeah. Well, you know what? I was just minding my own. I wasn't even paying attention to the goose, and the goose when they start hissing at you. You get hissed at by a goose, but I will step up to a goose. You know what? You step up to a goose will back up.
well, I mean, they'll run if you run after them.
Yeah,
but I think if what is all this goose talk upsetting to you, Ryan?
I don't blame him. I'm upset. I'm a little heated, quite frankly.
But I mean, if you go after a goose. I think if you run boldly and show no fear, they'll back away. But if you come in there and you hesitate at the moment of truth,
they will rip your heart out.
You will become a dead park goer.
Rough.
It is a hard heart that scares a goose.
Yeah, you got to feel it in your marrow. You got to know, goose, I'm coming at you. You're not coming at me, and they will respect you for that.
Because if you don't, you will be in a world of shit.
Yeah. Are geese the ones with teeth?
I think so.
That's just make them more terrifying.
Banana? Is that what this is?
What's wrong?
You are so upset.
Ryan, you have some opinions?
Constant.
Boom!
Mostly knocking over this giraffe.
Yeah, well, giraffe had it coming. Alright, hey, let's talk about what you've seen.
I have seen 8 movies.
8?
Which might as well be 2 by the estimation of what I normally have. Yeah. I watched with Ryan Elf, Buddy's Musical Christmas, a kind of CG mock clay production in the spirit of the movie with Will Ferrell.
Was it clever?
Jim Parsons played the part of Will Ferrell. Yeah. Ed Asner played Santa Claus. Mark Hamill played a hard-hearted grown man who has long since gotten out of the spirit of Christmas.
Did he sound like the Joker?
No, he just sounded
like sad Mark Hamill.
Yeah, he sounded like sad Mark Hamill, like he'd been beaten.
Name of the podcast.
It was entertaining. I mean, I enjoyed it. I haven't actually seen all of Elf because the one time I tried to see it in Coos Bay, Oregon, it was Thanksgiving.
It's the only place to see it, really.
It was a Thanksgiving presentation of the movie, and
were you distracted constantly?
I was. I worry that none of this is usable to him.
Ryan, you're being very unprofessional. Well, stop hitting yourself.
That's like asking him not to breathe.
Ryan, stop breathing. Right.
I think I know what it is. I think it's that I'm not standing.
All right, it's time to stand and dance.
Anyway, so I was in Coos Bay, Oregon. It was Thanksgiving. I had gone to visit my then girlfriend's family, and there was a showing of Elf at the local movie house, which actually I think it was more like a legitimate theater house.
Okay.
And they showed the movie on a crappy DVD player. Hooked up to a projector. Yeah. And then instead of using the house speakers of the theater, they brought in someone's bad PA speakers. Well, the movie started skipping about 30 minutes in.
Yeah. It's fun.
And much like this podcast, it started skipping about 30 minutes in, and the picture would go out.
Yeah.
They started and stopped it about like 3 or 4 times. Switched the DVD player twice. It was
not the optimal way of seeing Elf for the first time.
It was around the second time that they switched the DVD player that I noticed there was an older woman sitting maybe about 3 rows in front of me, like 2 aisles over.
Yeah.
Because this was a large, like, wide theater. And she had, like, her small dog kind of nestled in her purse for the movie. And we were like, really?
Dogs love Elf.
Apparently. So, the movie never got running again. So,
so you don't even know how it ends?
Yeah, so...
Tragic.
So, I don't even really know how it started, because it kept cutting out so much.
Well.
So, since then, now I'm married to Anne. I think one Christmas we both received copies of Elf. Still haven't gotten around to watching it.
Wow.
So I'm hoping that this week's movie is not Elf, because I think she would be distressed if I watched it without her, although she's probably seen it by now.
I assure you it is not Elf.
Are you sure it's not Elf?
I'd have to double check. But I like Elf. I don't know if I like Elf that much. But you saw...
But I saw this kind of made-for-TV... it's holiday fare. It was from like 3 Christmases ago, probably when we first got our DVR. But it was good. It was Jim Parsons did a fair enough job. It embodied the spirit of Christmas, which is what you need in August or September when I watched the movie. While I was on my month-and-a-half sabbatical from work, while I was hanging out with
sounds delightful
with the little screecher down here.
Indeed.
I watched Gentlemen Prefer Blondes for the first time.
Oh, how have you seen many Monroe films?
I've seen
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
I've seen
Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, I've seen Some Like It Hot. I've seen there was a movie that she did that was like almost like a road drama where
Misfits?
No. It was
Bus Stop.
It was one where they're rafting down a river. It was like it wasn't The River's Edge because that was the Keanu Reeves movie, right?
River's Edge, and that has actually nothing to do with rafting.
Yeah,
that's dead bodies down by a river.
It wasn't The River Wild. That was
that's Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Her only action film.
It was something called like The River's Crossing or something like that.
I'm not familiar with this film. I'm sure
terrible. She sings one song in it. It was a largely forgettable movie. I mostly put a bunch of Marilyn Monroe movies on my radar when that TV show Smash was on TV, where they were doing the Marilyn Monroe musical, and it actually was like, well, maybe I've been unfair in giving.
Her the short shrift.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I feel that Marilyn Monroe is kind of blown out of proportion.
And how could she not be?
Yeah,
she is very iconic.
She's iconic. She was, the first centerfold in Playboy. But I mean, it's almost, and I realized what it was while I was watching the movie. It's that. Actually, it wasn't when I was watching this movie. It was when I was watching the Billy Wilder documentary that I was watching, where he was talking about Marilyn Monroe and the certain things that she had going for her as a performer that no one else had, and that she could go from 1 minute just being a total idiot in real life, but then at other moments she could do an 8-page scene without even skipping a beat.
Fine actor studio training.
So, I was kind of reflecting on that in this, although really the movie features Jane Russell,
who I actually prefer.
She's the brunette in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
I've always preferred brunettes,
and I really preferred Jane Russell to Marilyn Monroe in it. And it wasn't that Marilyn Monroe wasn't likable, and it wasn't that she didn't turn in a fair performance. It was just, I like Jane Russell. We
have our type.
Well, I like Jane Russell as when she's acting. Apparently, Jane Russell, the private person, was a bit of a right-wing, ultra right-wing. I think she was
dingbat.
I don't know. I mean, I think she felt she was informed, but I think a lot of her politics was colored by the fact that when she was very young, basically she had to have like a back alley abortion and never recovered from it. So
that's rough.
Yeah, it's you can if you read quotes from her about politics and how rabidly conservative she was. it seems like it was really colored by that experience and the fact that probably at the time that, she was seeking such attention, medical attention.
Sure.
It was probably just horrifying, and how could that not affect you? So
I can't even imagine.
Especially if it leads to you losing a child. So
no doubt. Did she ever have a kid?
I think she did eventually.
Okay.
But
Good going, Jay.
But I think she was also married like 3 times. So as many in Hollywood are. But good movie. Enjoyed it. Anne walked in like halfway through it, and she said to herself, "Oh wow, I should really go back and watch this." So
it's certainly colorful.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. I wouldn't even say it's the greatest Marilyn Monroe movie, because I think Some Like It Hot is just so much better and so much more likable.
But so is this? Yeah, but she's on. That's basically a supporting role in that movie. But it is probably the best film she's in, unless we're kind of like Silent Call About Eve or Asphalt Jungle, where she's in both those very briefly.
It cracked my top 700. Yeah. So it was better than most, but it wasn't better than a lot of movies that I really like. One movie that I did really like though, Tom Hanks, Larry Crown.
You're the guy who likes Larry Crown.
I didn't know that I liked Larry Crown. It got on my radar when Stephen Colbert did his, I think it was his Halloween special. Mm-hmm. Maybe just threw up on me. So that's always great.
Good times.
He did a Halloween special, and Tom Hanks came trick-or-treating during it. Mm-hmm. I think as one of his other characters, like he came as like Forrest Gump, or he came as the Castaway in Castaway. And then he had this group of little kids trick-or-treating with him, and he was like, "What do you want, kids? Larry Crown! Larry Crown!" And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch this movie someday. And it took me apparently 4 years.
I never saw it. But it is one of those movies that truly, almost, unless someone mentions it, it never get a second. I know he directed it. He also directed That Thing You Do, which I do like.
And just got that on DVD.
It's a fun movie. Larry, all I remember, what I recall Larry Crown is some guy. Tom Hanks was at a gas station, and a guy actually approached him and told Tom Hanks that he did not like the movie, and Tom Hanks actually took out his wallet and gave him his money for his ticket back.
Well, that's all you can really do at that point. I mean, and it's interesting that people will approach what other industry would you approach someone for what they did and say, you did absolutely terrible. It was...
Well, he did... I mean, it was his film. He did direct it. I mean, if he was just acted in it, it's like, I'm sorry, take it up with someone else. But that was his vision.
Well,
yeah. But he had no obligation, but he was Tom Hanks. He's the king of nice, so... And I'm sure the guy felt like a complete dick afterwards.
I'm sure he probably tells the story. And it's like, Tom Hanks gave me my money back for that movie. It was so, and I'm sure he just feels vindicated.
Tom Hanks is awesome.
I've
totally right.
I've really come around on him, as I mentioned.
Oh yeah, you were not the big.
Pretty much, I'll skip everything from Big through until The Lady Killers. So,
what? There's a lot of good stuff in there.
I'm sure there is, but I'll eventually get to it.
When we do our film, start picking films, I can see which ones you're going to avoid with the board. All right, what else?
Let me see. Oh, what I was going to say about Larry Crown.
Oh, okay.
It was a nice kind of second chapter movie.
Yeah.
Like, because you know how you have your coming of age films. And then there's kind of that gray area in between, so it was kind of like nice to see a movie where someone.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so that's the reason I liked it. I just wanted to say that. I watched Ziegfeld Follies. It's kind of hard to review it as a movie because it's more of a anthology of bits and vignettes. Watching the what I'm trying to think of, the giant grand scale choreographed swim scene.
Sure, the Busby Berkeley stuff.
Yeah. There's a couple of those in there, and Gene Kelly's in it, Red Skelton.
It's spectacle.
Yeah, it's good. It has William Powell.
Then man.
So I mean, it was one of those movies that was just kind of there. I knew the name and I wanted to see it. It's around the same time, I think I went and saw a re-showing of Rebel Without a Cause at the Bob Hope Theater in Stockton.
Oh wow!
Which was my first time going there. And
How is that theater?
it's even more spectacular than the Crest. It's a bigger theater. It's more well taken care of, and it's really like when they say it's a grand cinema theater, it really is.
But it's in Stockton.
It's worth the drive.
I never. Okay.
Like they're gonna be showing A Star Is Born, which I have no interest in seeing.
Which one? There's two. The Streisand one or the other one?
Judy Garland.
Judy Garland. See, that'd be. I've seen neither. All right. Next, Ryan's getting restless.
Ryan's getting restless.
He needs to know what the movie is, so.
Which means it's time to move on. Made for cable, 7 Days in Hell, Andy Samberg. Just okay. I wanted to like it a lot more than I did.
I always pull for Andy Samberg, and I just.
It wasn't anything.
I'm like a hot rod apologist.
It wasn't anything Andy Samberg did wrong. It just wasn't. It wasn't smart enough. It was like the kind of cable movie that would have come out in 1986.
It's the kind of cable movie that you realize watching it why it's a cable movie.
Yeah, it's like Combat Academy. It's like it's like all those movies that were on cable. Like it's just a cable movie. I guess that's the nicest thing I can say about it.
Hey, good enough for cable.
Another movie that I can only say I saw it with you, Miami Connection.
Hey.
We saw the riff tracks send up of the YK Kim.
You had a good time.
It was funny. I mean, the riff track stuff is always fun, and I like a bad movie. I like a bad action movie. I was kind of disappointed there wasn't more action. But given the grade of the action, I can see why there wasn't. I think they may have been limited by their ability as well as their resources. So,
there are at least 4 really big laughs, and I don't generally laugh a lot in theaters. But the Spank Bank line killed me for a good 30 seconds,
and the subplot with the half Korean, half African American guy's dad.
Oh my god.
Where he says, "Oh my God, my dad!"
Oh, the emotion!
I can't even get that high.
It's
up.
beautiful when you're not, because when I first saw it, you don't need a riff tracks for that.
Yeah,
you just oh my God, that came out of him. So that's an instant smile every time.
Yeah,
the emotion that poor actor showed.
I watched Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren in Hitchcock.
That's all right.
Yeah, it was good. It was, it's one of those movies that whenever you see a biopic, the truth is probably somewhere in between.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate that it's because I hate biopics that go through the span of a whole career. This one kind of
just focused on one era,
like
one
Game
film.
Psycho made.
Yeah,
and I do like the stuff where he's outside the theater and it's almost like he's watching the audience how they react, and he's almost like a maestro, and he knows. Yeah. That kind of stuff's cool, and I like looking at Scarlett Johansson. It makes me happy every time.
Scarlett Johansson was actually probably my least favorite part of the movie.
But for my eyes, my eyes, Scott, my eyes enjoyed it.
It was just what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. And
it was fine.
Non-offensive. That would probably be the best way.
Passable.
Yeah, it was. Helen Mirren, I probably enjoyed a lot more than Scarlett Johansson.
Oh no, I mean we're talking about better role. Yeah, she had it, and I will say I was kind of like when. And I like the beginning when they do the whole Ed Gein beginning with the shovel.
And having that subplot in it was interesting. Like, where he's just having this ongoing dialogue with Ed Gein throughout the movie.
Yeah. So there's touches that are nice. And I will commend Anthony Hopkins, who I thought looked nothing like Hitchcock, but
convinced me that he was Hitchcock.
Yeah, within, moments.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, not the whole movie, and not like every time you looked at him, but...
Yeah.
Good enough.
It was more than just a makeup job. All right, cool.
Well, Ryan, you're in luck. There's only one movie left.
And that movie is?
The non-Neil LaBute movie, Some Girls, with Adam Brody, Kristen Bell, Zoe Kazan. Ryan apparently had very strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
A lot of... and
I think I have a crush on Zoe Kazan.
I don't know if this was my first Neil LaBute movie or not.
In the Company of Men,
No.
Nurse Betty.
Did he do Thank You for Smoking?
No, that's Juno guy. That's
Jason
Reitman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't direct this one. It's just based on one of his plays.
Oh, okay.
Get it out.
Scream and shout.
It was based on one of his plays.
Was it mean-spirited?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
that's
Basically, it's the best way to describe it is it's a much more unlikable version of High Fidelity.
Ooh.
Where
That might be rough.
Where Adam Brody plays the John Cusack role, and
because Adam Brody, I can see being very unlikable.
yeah, and basically the theme of the movie is what hath man wrought. And in looking back at various relationships, and basically Adam Brody is going back and revisiting all his ex-girlfriends and trying to bring it to some closure.
Yeah.
But basically it just shows how shitty he is, and the fact that he's the one who's setting everything in motion, so like he's the one who's trying to control who gets the closure, and Ryan
gets the closure.
It's tough for him.
You know what? He's been quite the trooper, and we're gonna just go ahead and show you what movie you're about to watch.
I'm sorry.
No apologies, man. No apologies needed. I thought I had the poster in here. Maybe I don't. Well, I do have it as my lock screen, because I always put the podcast I'm doing next as my lock screen. So please forgive the time thing in the way. We're gonna watch this.
Huh. Kurt and Courtney.
Yes. Documentary. Nick Bloomfield.
Well, I mean, at least
you have not seen this.
I have not seen this,
which is odd for me.
I remember when it was based on a book, right?
No, it's Nick Bloomfield. It's kind of he does investigative documentaries.
Okay.
So it's
so at least if this one's a feel bad, at least this one is based on something interesting.
It doesn't lead to. Well, here's the thing: it doesn't lead to Kurt Cobain's death. It pretty much that's the starting point.
Yeah.
So now it's the what happened. So, but beautiful thing about Nick Bloomfield, dude is fearless. I mean, he's the guy who did Biggie and Tupac. He did the Eileen Wuornos, both those documentaries. And he always has this power of approaching, like he approaches Suge Knight in prison, or he approaches Eileen Wuornos to say, like, I hung out with your mom, who she hates, and just you see the eyes. And he may approach someone in this movie too and ask maybe, well, let's just watch the movie.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be back.
At 8:40 a.m. on April the 8th, 1994, Kurt Cobain's body was found.
The lead singer of the group Nirvana had taken his own life, shooting himself in the head, in the head, in the head.
Can't buy happiness.
He was the center of attention. He's very nice, very well-mannered he was.
The world's going to explode any day.
I'm doing this film about Kurt Cobain.
You want to shut the camera off, please?
Courtney has had a reputation for being extraordinarily violent.
How did you and Courtney originally meet?
She came up and threw a drink in my face.
When we were living up in Seattle, we had like the same drug connection. And we came up here to do big lines of coke on this table.
I don't think he killed himself. I think that somebody killed him.
It's your daughter. Someone's own father, is saying that maybe his daughter is a murderer.
I don't know if she works inside. I've got an inside track on her mind. I told her that from the beginning. I'll keep kicking your ass.
You did some deal with Courtney, right?
Yeah. She offered me $50,000 to whack Kurt Cobain. Yep, blow his fucking head off.
Like that.
Buy me a beer, I might do some more talking.
We're talking about evidence indicating it would have been impossible for him to pick up the shotgun.
As far as you're concerned, you want to find Courtney Love.
Sorry, I comes wrong apartment, sorry.
Be ready, because she's going to fucking try to grab that camera.
Did you catch my rehearsal to SIR? What were you doing there?
Courtney, why do you personally threaten journalists?
It's my right to do it. It's not against the law.
You're going to wish you'd never been born.
Don't fuck with me, Courtney.
If anything comes out that hurts my wife, I'll fucking hurt you.
Where are you going with this? You can't do this. I'll walk off. Are you filming at all?
This is Kurt Cobain. I'm at the end of my rope.
End of story.
We have returned. We have finished Kurt and Courtney.
We're back in babyless.
Indeed. The 1997 documentary directed by Nick Broomfield that I'll just read the envelope. I'll cheat. Director Nick Broomfield chronicles Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, the grunge icon who died in 1994 at age 27. The film charts his rise to fame, his drug-addled relationship with Courtney Love, and the conspiracy theories surrounding his death. Primarily the third part. Before I ask how you felt the movie, let me give you a backstory of how I came across it. I wouldn't call myself the biggest Nirvana fan. I liked Nirvana. I had Nevermind. I had In Bloom. I enjoyed him. When he died, I was saddened, but life went on. But this documentary came out it played at our local art house theater, Tower Theater, back in the day, and I was immediately very interested in getting any backstory on his death, because I always have more of a curiosity when people die too young. Like, what's the cause? I always assumed it was just it was too much. You heard he had the heroin addiction, what have you.
Plus, in the time before the internet, you actually had to read books, magazines, and watch movies if you wanted to.
Basically, I mean, we had our AOL at the time,
or Prodigy,
indeed.
CompuServe sample floppies,
indeed, and I only had so much AOL free hours that I had to devote mostly to dial up porn. So
you had to spread your 40 hours.
Those 40 hours went by very fast, may I add. I just remember 40 hours, that's plenty. I'll probably get it all out of my system. It was like a drug. It was
just an hour a day. That's just like a month.
Yeah, because clearly I'm just going to be on the computer for an hour. No. They just gave you a taste, and then before you know it, I signed on for MindSync. I believe that was my internet provider. And kind of never looked back from there. I mean, I can pinpoint that might have been the moment that I turned my back on... No, that's not true, because then I got my own place, and the first thing I did when I got my own place was I got a cable, and I programmed my whole television watching itinerary. The alarms would go off. Hey, now I got to watch this. Because it was like a dream as a kid to have my own TV and my own rules and do whatever I want. So
you didn't just use the VCR to record stuff?
Nah, no time for that. Not when the technology's there. So I got that out. After that, I've almost turned my back on TV completely. I just don't have time. But internet, from that moment, AOL, I was pretty much hooked. But that's nor here nor there. We're talking about Kurt and Courtney. So I saw it in the theater, and I've seen a few documentaries prior to that. I was Michael Moore fan. I saw Roger and Me and Errol Morris stuff, then Blue Line. So I didn't see a whole lot of documentaries at that point in theaters, so this was an early one for me. But what I got out of it is the first documentary where all the talking heads, I was skeptical of virtually every person that was on the screen.
For those who've never seen the movie, Nick Broomfield, who's the director of the movie and the main interviewer.
Yeah, he's the Michael Moore, if you will.
He goes to a number of characters in Kurt Cobain and Courtney.
Courtney
loves
Court and Courtney.
In Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love's past, visits them. Some of them, still living in their old hometown. And not much has changed in the time since they were contemporaries.
Sure.
Then you have family members who are kind of estranged. Then you have would-be paparazzo.
Oh my god.
Then you have, musicians
who had a past.
Almost all of whom never realized that taste of anything more than moderate. Pretty much like
they had maybe a brush, maybe they opened, or
the notoriety that they receive probably just from being in this movie is probably the most that many of them ever saw in their careers.
For sure, but they have opinions.
Yeah,
they certainly have opinions.
I mean, I was surprised the band Zeke was in this. I actually know them, and
are they still with us?
Oh yeah, they're well. I mean, I think officially they may have broken up or been on long-term hiatus, but I mean they put out a number of albums, all of which are really good. Mm-hmm. So, but they weren't really interviewed in the movie; they were just featured in it.
It was happenstance.
Yeah,
they went to a show in Seattle, and Zeke was performing.
But yeah, nobody in this movie was particularly
a reliable witness,
credible. I mean, it seemed as everybody was talking, I was just kind of trying to go through in my head. How is this person basically going into business for themselves?
Exactly. I mean, and obviously the biggest example of that would be Courtney Love's dad, who's lives in nearby Sacramento. We were trying to figure out where exactly.
Supposedly lived in a somewhere just outside of Sacramento, and we were trying to figure out based on what the streets looked like. Is this?
I'm looking for a street. Just need one street name.
Is this Woodland? Is this Rio Linda? Is this Fair Oaks?
Well, he runs I did find, and at one point it corroborates with the documentary. He runs a equestrian sanctuary, and a couple points later in the movie, he's clearly in front of some stables. Mm-hmm. So if he's still, so I of course went to Sacramento equestrian sanctuaries, and so far, I guess I can, I'll do.
If you really wanted to do diligence, you probably
could figure it out. To my knowledge, he's still around here, though. But yeah, he's, he already wrote a book, basically. It
looked like he had written a couple books at the time this movie was made.
Basically saying Kurt Cobain did not kill himself. He was murdered. And all but completely implicating his own daughter. He practices that tough love, as he would say. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a documentary chock full of the unreliable witness. So I guess it could be construed as maddening, but the thing is, where a lot of documentaries, you don't see the director, but Broomfield, like a Michael Moore, he's very much a part of the story as anything, and he's actually there, and has no problem questioning the valid, how valid
the veracity of
to the point where a guy a private investigator hired by Courtney Love to locate him apparently gets obsessed with it and basically devotes his life to proving that Kurt Cobain was in fact murdered. Mm-hmm. Basically to the point where he's living out of his car and basically putting all his stock on the idea that Kurt Cobain had too much heroin in his body to pull the trigger.
A claim that was, spoilers,
quickly debunked.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You're right. It's who's out to get what they want. The only person that I truly believed was Aunt Mary. Because Aunt Mary, I feel, was a genuine human being from her beautiful perm to her lovely vest.
And I don't necessarily think that she was really questioned as to.
No, she was basically, yeah. Well, she acknowledged that he probably killed himself,
and she was more there to provide context to she had
simpler time.
Yeah, she had copies of old recordings of him as a kid and stuff like that. It was it was interesting because that was probably the part of his life that most people would not see, and that was probably one of the more engaging, interesting things. Seeing. Old pictures, hearing old recordings of him as a kid, just being a kid, basically. But at the same time, it's weird when you see a documentary like this, and it's not intended to be kind of a latent sadness to everything, but just looking at the state most of these people's lives are in, and the conditions in which they lived, seeing a lot of the people that were Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love's like friends, and
on.
going to like their houses and just seeing, that state of permanent 13 years old, or seeing like an old boyfriend of Courtney Love's, and earlier in the movie they talk about that she's at that time engaged to marry Ed Norton, and you look at this guy and he kind of looks like a low rent Ed Norton, so you're like, maybe there's something else. Possibly. For that it was engaging in that sense.
For the record, I actually believed him.
Yeah,
I really did, because he clearly had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, and I mean, there were a couple people that while they're getting interviewed, you're just kind of looking at like the pauses that come in because they're in such like a seemingly drug-induced stupor that they can't even articulate.
Yeah,
the most basic of reactions. Or
at one point, they interview the nanny, and she comes in because they talk to her friend first, who also looks like she's in a drugged.
She wasn't. At
least she was coherent.
Yeah, well, she was coherent, and she was a little more quick on the draw. So,
but the nanny.
She's probably the one that talks to the cops when they get called at a party.
Mm-hmm. She's the one that shows up on the 11 o'clock news and gives her side of the story. But yeah, the nanny was completely like, you just look in the eyes like you thought she was gonna just pass out.
Yeah,
like geez, all right.
And maybe that was what it took to summon the courage for both her and like Kurt's supposed like former best friend to get on camera. Was they had to reload to.
And did he reload into his forehead? Because I'm just looking at the Big Dipper. I don't know if those are it's acne scars or it's just he got in a rumble earlier, but I couldn't stop looking at his forehead.
Meth and heroin are hell of a drug.
So I hear. What I do like, and I've seen quite a few of Nick Broomfield's documentaries.
What are some of his others?
He did a Heidi Fleiss one, which is really good. It actually humanizes Heidi Fleiss. Mm-hmm. He did 2 on Eileen Wuornos, who the movie Monster, Charlize Theron is based off. She did Eileen Wuornos, The Selling of a Serial Killer, which is basically a documentary, which almost parallels on this, where she's considered the first major female serial killer, and it kind of focuses on the people who are trying to make a profit off it. Mm-hmm. And then and he actually does talk to her a great deal in it. And then there's a follow-up one called Eileen, Life and Death of a Serial Killer, which is more based on her and basically it humanizes her without necessarily letting her off the hook. Mm-hmm. She lost her mind, but there's a reason she lost her mind, and you know what? There's a lot of people to blame for it.
Yeah.
And she's a frightening woman. There's one point in that movie because she hates her. Her mom did her bad in all way, shape, or form, and Nick Broomfield, against Eileen's wishes, actually interviews her mom, who's actually at this point a very kind of a meek woman, who's feels very bad for all the stuff that Eileen's done, and she does take responsibility. And Eileen, on the day of her, basically before she's put to death, she talks to Nick, and she's already kind of she's
out of her head.
And Nick mentions that he talked to her mom, and you just see the fire in her eyes, and it's that feeling oh my god, you just made a crazy woman that much crazier just now
in her final hours.
Yes. And you can love him or hate him for that, but he is not afraid to confront. Like in this movie, in Kurt and Courtney, they're at a AACP
or ACLU.
ACLU, I'm sorry, that's totally different. Kind of a awards dinner, and basically supporting freedom of speech, which Nick Broomfield actually
takes them to task for their choice of Courtney Love as a keynote speaker,
who is notorious for not only threatening journalists but beating them up for saying anything remotely negative about her, and that takes balls. Mm-hmm. And you admire that he does that. And another example, which I said earlier before we started, he did the Biggie and Tupac documentary, which explores the internal question: how come no one's found these killers?
Yeah.
And that's actually a very interesting documentary, too. But at one point, he actually visits Suge Knight in jail, and not behind glass. We're talking like out in the yard. Mm-hmm. And just like in this movie, the cameraman cannot keep the camera from shaking. He is scared shitless, because Broomfield will ask the questions that everyone's afraid to ask. And you admire that. You get the impression this guy's been punched in the face a few times.
Well,
but
with his Huey Lewis good looks,
oh yeah,
he can afford to take that risk.
No, absolutely. So this, it's a different type of documentary. I don't know how informative it is. It makes me ask more questions than get the answers I'm seeking.
And if nothing else, I mean that shows the strength of a documentary, mm-hmm. that it engages you to the point that either you want to research more, you want to find out more about it, you look to what this person's other works are, and you even have to revisit it to see if there's anything else you can take away from it. And clearly you've seen this one enough times to know that you can go back to it.
It's interesting because the movie is kind of without an ending. I guess technically the ending's when he confronts her at the dinner thing.
His Roger and me moment.
You know what? That just you just brought that to the front. I didn't even think about it. But yeah, it's exactly his Roger and me moment. But basically, the movie ends because he runs out of financing.
Yeah, and I mean, really, at that point, that tells you why he was willing to do what he did, because he had nothing left to lose at that point.
Because Courtney Love was threatening. I mean, they backed out because one of the backers was affiliated with MTV, and Courtney Love, who has a relationship with MTV and caught wind of what's going on, basically
scared him off.
So. This is the documentary Courtney doesn't want you to see. Now, they actually made a documentary that came out this year with obviously Courtney Love's wishes, which is more of a celebration. And it does focus on the tragedy of Kurt Cobain, but didn't see it. I heard good things, but it's definitely doesn't go into anything implying that he was murdered. Basically, it's the classic success got too much, and he couldn't take it.
Kurt Cobain was always one of those characters, one of those celebrities in my life that I know that he held a great deal of significance to a number of people who were my age,
sure,
and especially older. I was in 94 was when he passed.
Yeah.
So I was 13 years old. 94, I would have either been, if it was April,
8th grade, maybe
7th grade. I want to say.
Okay. At that point, you're almost developing your taste in music.
Well, yeah, I had started getting on. I mean, within that 92 to 94 period, that was when I started, basically seeking out music on my own.
Instead of period, by the
way. Instead of just listening to what my family was listening to,
which was.
My sister was mostly into a lot of dance music, Hot 100,
some Snap and Black Box.
Marky Mark,
CNC Music Factory.
Oh yeah, Freedom Williams was a huge, gone before his time.
He'll make you sweat till you bleed, which always seemed very, very disturbing to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to sweat till I bleed. Is that even possible?
So I didn't have a lot of, good places to start with from there. I think, watching the American Music Awards, got me into Public Enemy. Because that was Apocalypse 91, The Enemy Strikes Black. Was the album that featured their collaboration with Anthrax on Bring the Noise.
Yo, how low can you go, Death Row?
So that got me both into hip hop or I guess it wasn't hip hop, it was rap and
it was the walk this way of its time.
And that was the other thing, is that I eventually saw the video for Run DMC and Aerosmith doing Walk This Way. So I got into a lot of dad rock and butt rock because of that, because Aerosmith was at the peak of their game. My best friend at the time was super into the heavier side of hair rock. He was into
Wasp.
No, more I mean, his sister was into Poison and
first concert I went to was Poison. Poison and Warrant.
But then he got into like AC/DC. So,
okay. I would never call them hair rock.
Yeah, I know. It was just heavy rock, but
okay.
But hard rock.
They didn't have to use the Aquanet or wear the makeup necessarily.
No, they weren't handsome enough to be a pretty boy band.
Got it.
But he was into stuff like that. So, like I eventually got into Ozzy and Kiss and
the acceptable
got
stuff.
myself into Rush and and that was the thing is that I was so like caught up with those. Like I think I was still discovering like Queen. In 92, 93, so...
It's like Nirvana's happening right now. It's like, no, I'll get to you eventually. I'm working.
I'll be honest with you. I had Weird Al's Off the Deep End probably a year before I had Nevermind. No, that may not... Well, no, that's true. That I had it before because the way I got my copy of Nevermind, I was in beginning band my 6th grade year, and... I don't know if it was that year or the following year. One of the kids in the class had stolen the Nirvana tape from his sister.
Cassette?
And didn't care about it, so instead of giving it back to her, he gave it to me.
Okay.
So Joey Dunbar, thank you for...
name names.
Thank you for my copy of Nevermind. But it was one of those albums I listened to maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Because it just... I don't know if it was... I just didn't relate to anything on it, and maybe I was too young to be disaffected at that point. So
perhaps.
So instead, I was just like I was into like all the shred rock and
Okay, it's like not yet. Not yet. I remember the first. My copy of Nevermind was recorded by a friend of mine. So I had it on the Blink cassette tape. I played the hell out of it. And then eventually... it's funny knowing the Weird Al album, because when I got a CD player late. I was in high school. And I remember it's kind of like a boombox. But it wasn't a real boombox, because one, like, if you had a CD player, but if you moved it for a second, it skipped. But the first 3 CDs, and I remember the first 3 CDs I got vividly. Queen's Greatest Hits. The one with Bohemian Rhapsody. There were 2 of them. There's Classic Queen and Queen's Greatest Hits. I had the one that did not have We Are the Champions. I had the one with Bohemian Rhapsody. Patti Smythe, self-titled Patti Smythe album. The one with the duet with Don Henley, Sometimes Love Just Isn't Enough. For some reason, I really liked that song at the time. I stand by it still. And then Weird Al Yankovic's Off the Deep End, which I loved Weird Al, still love Weird Al. And
one of the few like live concerts that... has never disappointed me. Even when it's been almost exactly the same show.
I've seen him at the State Fair 4 times.
I think 3 for me.
And yes, I remember 2 of those shows being exactly the same. But I think the last one was actually different, because it was right when Alapalooza came out. So when he started doing the...
wow, so you went early. I went for the last
Bad Hair Day?
No, the last one I went for was Alpocalypse.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's the one I mean.
The one.
What's the one that has the American Pie Star Wars?
That would have been... That would have either been Bad Hair Day or Running with Scissors.
I think it was... Okay, maybe it was Running with Scissors. But I went to Bad Hair Day, which was clearly the album twice. That's the one with Gangsta's Paradise in it. Or Amish Paradise, I'm sorry. Love Weird Al. That was the only State Fair shows I've actually been to. Been meaning to catch Def Leppard, who've been there a few times.
I think the first documentary I may have ever watched was a Weird Al documentary.
Was
The Complete Al?
You know what? I've seen his Behind the Music, which
it's not too far off.
Yeah.
Complete Al, I would say it pushes the limit of actually being more of a mockumentary. Because
does not surprise me.
There are moments where it kind of like takes. I think the Behind the Music was much more on the nose.
Behind the Music was funny because he mentions basically the beginning. Well, I don't drink. I never did drugs. I don't have any scandals.
Pretty much the only thing that he was addicted to would be like desserts.
Yes. I mean, he did have the one major tragedy with his parents, but I think that even happened after the Behind the Music.
Oh yeah, and I mean that of all the people who have an excuse to be, just devastated and taken back from it. And he, to his credit, he never let it slow him down, even though his parents died because of like a freakish gas leak in their house, and it took both of them. That's which crazy. I mean, you know, in theory, hopefully they went peacefully, but like
one would hope. But it's you know, funny you mentioned that because I remember then when he was on Mark Maron's show, Mark Maron actually brought it up. It's like, and I've never heard Weird Al ever taken aback even for a second. And he's like, "Oh, we're gonna go there, okay?"
And that was exactly.
But he was still a good sport,
and I know he was totally fine with it.
Love Weird Al.
I think, you know, if any entertainer, if I would be devastated by anything negative ever coming out by anyone, I think it would be Weird Al Yankovic.
I think we can rest easy. No,
I'd like to hope upon hopes that he is probably like the most normal, level-headed dude. And I mean, he's one of those people that like everybody has like a relative that went to Cal Poly at the same time he was going there. For me, it was my uncle.
Yeah.
He was.
Did he was like a DJ there, or was he?
I don't know if he was a DJ there or if he just recorded in the building where the radio station was in the bathroom.
Okay. I remember hearing that.
Or no, he was a DJ. I think you were right because I think he had a radio show. But everybody who has like a father, an uncle, a cousin, an aunt, like. You know, they will bring it up because that's one of the, and that's kind of cool. Like for all the places. Anyway, we're so far away from Kurt Cobain.
It's fine. It's fine. It's beauty of this
but you know, but I think that's part of the reason why when Nevermind came out, and then later like In Utero was huge my 8th grade year.
Oh yeah, because that was the long. Because Incesticide was in between that, but that was seen as like the B-sides and what it was like kind of the throw-off album, like Smashing Pumpkins' Pisces Iscariot, or even Versus Pearl Jam.
And that was the thing. I just had a sense of humor. I was, you know, so Beavis and Butthead were behind AC/DC and Metallica, so I was like, okay, well, I'm into AC/DC and Metallica. I'm not into this grunge thing. Like
I earned props from
alternative, you know, in quotes, was a dirty word for me until probably about, you know, either my freshman or sophomore year in high school when we got Live 105 down in the Bay, in the South Bay, and I really got into, on Saturday mornings they had a show called Rock Over London, and they would just play like British, like Britpop bands, and I thought it was great because I was hearing all these bands I'd never heard of before, and I was like, you know what, I can get behind this. But
so it was like. Like Pulp and Blur and that kind of stuff?
Reef was big.
Oh, Reef.
I remember their album was a huge deal because they borrowed Bootsy Collins' Space Bass
to
record the album, which apparently you could just borrow it from Bootsy Collins and he'd let you record a Britpop album.
And that's why he's the coolest man on the planet.
Yeah, him and his rubber band.
We love you, Bootsy. Almost as much as we love Weird Al Yankovic.
But I mean, that was the thing. I mean, of course I would then go like, well, yeah, but Filter is crap. So...
Filter, yeah.
That was what I decided to dig my heels in against. Was
anti-Filter.
I would rage against Filter.
You don't want him to take your picture.
No.
Turn it back to we'll go back to Nirvana for a second. The misconception, "Hey man, nice shot." People assumed it was about Kurt Cobain, even though the song was, I believe, recorded before he died, and it's actually about Bud Dwyer. Who shot himself on television. He was a politician. There's actually a decent documentary about him called An Honest Man that you can find on YouTube.
But, I mean, for me, the documentaries that informed like my whole view of documentaries for the rest of my life and made me a lifetime fan of documentaries were The Complete Al, Roger and Me, The Big One.
Were you a Bowling for Columbine fan?
I was into it at the time it came out, but... I think I've only maybe watched it once or twice since I saw it in the theater.
I loved it. I wasn't a big Fahrenheit 9/11.
Yeah, Fahrenheit 9/11 was too much for me. And I went into the sneak preview for it late. It was at the Tower. I was working at the coffee house at the time. I had gotten off my shift and we like rushed there because
it was the event at the time.
Yeah,
that was an event picture.
And I watched like the last half of it, and I own it, and I've never watched it just because it's not a. I would say...
it feels very agenda-driven.
Capitalism, a love story, I actually came around on. Like, that one I liked a lot more.
Sicko?
I don't think I've seen Sicko.
Well, you should round it out. You be a completist. Sickos, I hold it.
But I mean, I watched
capitalism,
TV Nation. I watched.
I love TV Nation.
Did he do The Awful Truth?
Awful Truth.
Yeah, I watched both of those. Like, I loved those. And I was, for lack of a better word, I was a Michael Moore mark. Like, I was
I was too.
And
I was surrounded by a lot of, my family's predominantly conservative, and
I was predominantly conservative until I saw Roger and Me. Like, I was, that's always the story that, I can't remember who it was, if it was like Stephen, he's kind of a contemporary of Weird Al. Stephen Wright? No, it's not Stephen Wright. It's Stephen.
A singer?
Yeah. But he had a song called "I Was a Teenage Republican."
Okay.
And that was always the story of me when I was in junior high. Was that I would piss my sister off to no end. Like, I was so sucked into the right-wing agenda that mostly I picked up from listening to, like, Rush Limbaugh with my dad, and then, that was what got me interested in politics, and then I saw Roger and Me, and I think it just kind of made me question a lot of how I felt about things. Like, I just realized I cared about people more than I cared about, these, like, political celebrities that I had no attachment to.
Very true.
Then I, made friends with people, through the internet, and talked to people who had different opinions than me, and eventually I learned about the Dead Kennedys, and I started going to Jello Biafra spoken word shows. And
how are those?
They're long usually. Like, usually when he does one, he speaks for a minimum of like 3 hours.
Wow. I went to a Kevin Smith one in Davis. Or no, it was Oakland. He basically kept talking until people actually walked out.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, cool. You're definitely getting your money's worth, but he realized, what? Because it was basically Q&A the whole time.
Yeah.
So, but Kevin Smith's very long-winded. So he takes a question, that could be a half hour right there. And I think the place was it was completely full at the beginning, and he finally finished, and half the people were gone. And we stuck around. It was
It's a war of attrition when you go to something like that. Like, I remember the first...
Too much of a good thing is
the first Jello Biafra spoken word show I ever went to was at the Warfield in San Francisco.
Oh, nice venue.
And as my dog, I think, coughs up a hairball.
Like a cat.
Pretty much. He's been cleaning the floor with his tongue.
Oh, he's helping.
I got there, and I just figured it was, I was getting there for, like, the last half of it, and then, like, he spoke for, like, honest to God, like, 4 hours after I got there. I think it was, like, a 5-hour...
Is he a lively talker, or is he entertaining, at least?
Oh, well, and that's the thing, is that he was discussing, like, current events, he was discussing politics.
Was it like a rant?
Oh, yeah, it was more, like, he was doing 5 hours of prepared material with, like, quotes, citing to various news sources, talking about, like, bad... again, this was before the internet. Like, if you wanted to know about stuff that was going on, you went to go see people speak. So,
Them's the days.
Now it's so much easier to just log on, read through an article that you forget about instantly, and instead of going and having 5 hours that you're just beat over the head with material, and then... and he had, just like any punk rock show or any music show, he had, like, a set list almost of stuff he would do. So, now I'm going to do the part about, die for oil.
Like, that's my favorite. Yay.
And at the time, like, if you were a teenager who never got to see the Dead Kennedys, you were like, oh, this is so authentic. Do you know who this guy is?
You felt important and smart.
And then it was funny that, like, years later, I talked to people who, went to Dead Kennedy shows all the time. They're like, oh, God, it was like every weekend the Dead Kennedys were playing. Like, to the point that they were just annoyed by it. And they're like, oh, and this is the part where Jello Biafra went like this. And, And I think that's kind of like how I thought about Nirvana, like, to a certain extent, is that people, like, had their stories of, oh God, this means so much to me, this, and I just didn't have that connection. So,
I never had it to that level.
Yeah, I mean,
how about the art? For me, actually, the artists that is Tori Amos, but we don't see Tori Amos documentaries, so.
Didn't she? She's done a book, like.
Yeah, I probably should get it. She got all adult contemporary on me, and I kind of lost track of what's going on with her.
I mean, people grow.
They mature. They have kids, and then they become safer.
Yeah.
It's safe.
But this was interesting. This documentary was definitely not something I probably would have sought out on my own, just because of my own, same guy who burnt me out on the Beatles pretty much burnt me out on Nirvana. Like, he used to tell stories when we were in 7th grade about, I went to a Nirvana show and I was backstage when, I talked to Kurt. And
he sounds like a reliable witness, too.
And I mean, that was the thing. It was like, yes, I'm sure Kurt Cobain was hanging out with the Japanese 12-year-old, and he really identified with you, and Sacramento, for whatever reason, seems to lay claim to everything. So
he played Old Iron, so it's...
Yeah, and there's the whole story about the Crest Theater, the other historic theater in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. Well, one of I guess if you count the Esquire, one of three.
Your dog's dying.
I think he's okay. I think he's just in need of water.
Okay.
But the whole thing about the Crest is that supposedly in the basement after a show, Kurt stepped in a bucket of paint and put his feet on the wall, and now it's this much. Sacramento also has just these macabre, these macabre landmarks, like the Dorothea Puente house where. She was a female serial killer and
an elderly one at that.
Yeah, collecting their Social Security checks after she'd killed them, and people flock to the house, and it's like this.
It's got props now. It's
they're just a month or so ago they were doing guided tours of it, everybody knows someone who's lived in that house, and that's the same thing with the Crest. It's everybody's gonna go down and look at the Kurt Cobain footprints, and it just further reinforced that it put me off of him. I
used to walk my dog around the block of the Dorothea. I passed the Dorothea Fuente murder house every day.
14th and
is it F?
Or no, 15th and F, I think.
Yeah, I lived on E.
Yeah, because it's just below 16th. You can see it from the...
Yeah, it's right across from Sandra D's fine barbecue.
Where you've gone for multiple birthdays.
It's lovely. And I used to bank at the bank that Patty Hearst held up.
The Unabomber, his first target was the bike shop kitty corner from the building I work in.
Look at that. We've all been touched by history.
Sacramento is just a miserable place. All these things eventually cleared.
A place where we stab our heroes. That's topical, people.
It's really unfortunate.
Did you hear what happened? Maybe I should talk about it.
All I heard about was that the guy, one of the guys who was responsible for stopping the terrorist attack on a French train, he was somewhere around...
Midtown.
21st and K.
Yes.
And someone at random attacked him and stabbed him. He was in critical condition.
It was not... well, he's now in fair condition, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you'll hear this, and he's probably out of the hospital by now. But apparently a bunch of guys... was a guy and his girlfriend got in a fight, and punched the girlfriend. He jumped into action. It was a group of 5 guys and him... I'm wondering where his friends were, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But anyways, he gets, he ended up getting
stabbed for his trouble. He interjected himself.
Yeah. And the thing is, the girl ended up getting in the car with the guys at the end. It's chivalry.
So it was all for naught, basically.
Really, he walked away not realizing he was stabbed until somebody pointed out his shirt was turning red. And, had to go to the hospital.
Do you think to a certain extent that's just some sort of hero syndrome for him?
At this point, it has to be, right? He's he probably gets that adrenaline rush. And he's oh, here comes another parade.
You just worry that, he's going to end up at this place that, he can't feel anything unless he's throwing himself in harm's way.
Oh.
I mean, kudos,
Well, he's a Marine, right?
Yeah.
So, he
he's
might be capable.
To it.
I'd be safe with him protecting me down an alley.
Yeah, on 21st and K, those were my old stomping grounds for a bit.
Yeah, you avoided the stabbings, though. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right, we should probably end on that. So, Karen Courtney, interesting documentary.
So, was it just that how early you saw it as a documentary? That
It felt unlike any other documentary I've seen at the point. Like I said, because I usually would go watch these documentaries, and the talking heads I would take as the gospel what they were saying. This is the first one where I doubted everybody.
We were like, "Wow, is there anybody in this who's capable?" Like even Nick Broomfield felt.
Yeah, Broomfield. He seemed somewhat exasperated near the end. Like I don't know.
Like it like probably about like a third to 2/3 of the way through the movie, I was just kind of like, "Oh, this is rough." Like, and I kind of felt for him, but in the same way, I was just kind of like, well. But he accomplished his goal. I mean, it's now the 97 was when it came out, so we're now almost 20 years after this documentary came out. We're 18 years past. It's old enough to, it's considered an adult now.
Yes, it can
vote.
It can vote. Can't drink.
Can't drink, but it can vote.
It's probably drinking anyway.
But 20 years after it, we're talking about it, and we watched it, so...
It obviously left an impression on me, and that's why it's on this list.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
Hey, thank you for watching it.
Yeah,
all right. What did you want to say? Okay, music provided by Austin Osgram. To hear more, you can go to his SoundCloud, Facebook, or... YouTube page. Just put in Austin Osgram. That is Austin like the city, Oz like the wizard, and Graham like the cracker. Just a quick note: as much as y'all love the Austin's theme song, 2016 we will have a new theme song. Sometime co-host Benjamin Carpenetta has agreed to put something together for me, so it's probably gonna rock. Whatever it is, it's gonna be very exciting. And I usually say at this point, special shout goes out to Engineer Travis, whom you'll not be hearing this, but as of now, I am officially editing my own podcast.
Ooh.
The reins have been passed on, and I am...
You've been taught?
Yes.
Today you are a man?
We'll find out how this one turns out. Hopefully well. We will end with a song, and... Boy,
I found out who did the song. It was released in 1993.
Okay.
Wally Pleasant's "I Was a Teenage Republican."
Is that what we're going to end with?
That's what we're ending with.
Very well. All right, and with that, I bid you adieu.
So I went to my doctor and said, "What the heck is wrong with me?" And he just smiled and said, "Son, why don't you sign up for the GOP?" Well, the next thing you know, I'm putting up posters of Ronald Reagan on my wall. I got a collection of books by Milton Friedman and an autographed picture of Fawn Hall. Then I started working for my congressman, and on the first day that I got paid, I took all my money and donated it to Contra Aid. 'Cause I was a teenage Republican. Oh, the year was 1981, and a new era had just begun. We went from leisure suits to power suits and disco records to guns. And we told the world if you were politically left of center, then it was reason enough to invade you. So to keep us safe from the communist threat, we went to a golf course called Grenada. Meanwhile, in the White House, anybody who wasn't extremely rich was persona non grata. Nancy Reagan said to just say no to everything except Frank Sinatra. But I was a teenage Republican. They promised to cut taxes and increase defense spending by $800 billion. Shooting for a balanced budget, give or take 2 or 3 trillion. Well, I supported Reagan and I supported Bush because they both sounded so sincere. But now when I look back on the 1980s, it all seems pretty clear that those guys are willing to say anything just to get elected and nothing was achieved. The economy was destroyed and the American public was deceived. Now I'm standing in an unemployment line, my benefits are about to end. I wish I could apply to the same welfare programs the liberals tried to defend, but I was a teenage Republican, and I can't deny it. I was a teenage Republican, though I try to hide it. I was a teenage Republican.